So our final speaker in this session is Chris Cole from University of Dundee, who's the PI of the SATRE project. He's going to talk to us about some of the work that's been done in that project.
Okay. Right. Firstly, thanks for the organisers for inviting me here today. It's great to see everyone, and really interesting talk so far today, actually. And thanks, Paul, for just talking just now. I think you've introduced a couple of concepts that I'm going to be talking about, so that's good. So I'm Chris Cole. I'm from the University of Dundee. I have a dual role. I'm an academic, and also I'm the director or co-director of the Health Informatics Centre. And I'll give a bit of background on HIC first before I get into what the talk's actually about, which is a specification for trusted research environments, which I was leading, or which I led a year ago on this project called SATRE, and its future steps that we're starting this week, actually, on a new project we're using this. And this was primarily a collaboration between us, the Alan Turing Institute, Ulster University, UCL, and Research Data Scotland. Okay, I'll just use my fingers. So the Health Informatics Centre, so we've been around 20 years, and we are, in Scotland, we're called Safe Havens, essentially a trusted research environment. We have a pool of people, like Paul was saying, that we can move around projects, and we're a real mix of, primarily started out as data managers, data engineers for NHS data. But now we have software developers, infrastructure people, and a research team now, which is what I lead, which is somewhat unusual. Certainly in Scotland, it's unique. And in other places, I've not heard very many places with an actual research team embedded within the core system. And we work at multiple levels, internationally down to local. So our main data controllers that we work with are the NHS on the east of Scotland. But we collaborate through European networks, and UK networks as well. And yeah, so we support a lot of research over the last few years. The Scottish Safe Haven Network has been around since 2014 and sits under the Chief Scientist Office, and we required to comply with the Scottish Safe Haven Charter, which is about to be refreshed in a couple of weeks or a couple of months. We're ISO 27001 accredited, and the Safe Haven Network as a whole covers over 95% of the Scottish population in terms of health data, and at different levels of depth of granularity and things like that. And we're made up of 4 regional safe havens. So we're one of the regional safe havens, and a national safe haven that's supported by EPCC in Edinburgh, which I've just said. And so we host the data or support the data for the East of Scotland NHS. And we've run a trusted research environment for about 12 years now. And we've moved platforms in that time. And we're currently in cloud, public cloud. And we run a full cost recovery model, always have. We have no core support from anywhere. There's a little bit of funding comes from the Chief Scientist Office to the university, but funnily enough, they get siphoned out and pays for other things. So we don't get any of that money directly. We get funded to support some projects, but that's not really core funding. So yeah, we are pretty sustainable in quite a changing landscape. I thought I'd explain a little bit about TREs, just in case the audience isn't fully familiar with trusted research environments. The basic principle is the 5 SAFEs framework, which came out of Felix Ritchie's work in 2008 from ONS. And essentially it's 5 overlapping principles that govern the safety of a project and safety of the data. So you design systems to encapsulate these 5 principles of, who is accessing the data, and they've done some training and they have a proper sign-on. Your projects, that they've been reviewed and they're appropriate for the use of the data. So particularly with NHS data in Scotland, the primary use case is for public benefit. So the data and the project have to be used for public benefit, and it uses the data minimization principle. So you don't get a login and access to all the data. You get an extract of the data appropriate to your research and based on your requests for the research. We have safe settings, which is the TRE, as well as the processes that sit on top. And the safe data is, like I said, the data is managed for the project specifically. And then the key aspect is outputs. If you want to publish on your results, then you need to go through a formal egress mechanism to get your results out of the TRE and for use in a report or in a paper. And that gets manually checked to make sure there's no individual information, identifiable information in the data. We do de-identify the data that's in the TRE in the first place, but we don't allow out any individual level data. So if you have any summary counts of tables, any value less than 5 is zeroed out or has to be recalculated and made it so it's greater than 5, for example. So that's the background. Onto the project of SATRE itself. So at the time we started, which was now in 2022, beginning of 2022, 23, there's been a lot of landscape publications around how, and particularly NHS data should be used and sensitive data, what infrastructure is required for doing that at a national level in the UK. And then more recently, we've had the SATRE report, the one in green, which is again looking at across the 4 nations aspect. A lot of the aspects that come out of NHS England or UK government, which often focused on English requirements, whereas we're 4 nations and we have, especially for health, we have 4 different systems. And then it's scaling out into Europe. So the European Health Data Science Centre and then NTrust project, which are working in this space as well. And the point was that there are so many active, there was 50 then, now I think there's probably nearly 100, if not more. And everyone's TRE is different. Cloud, private, public, on-prem. What model have you used? Open source stack, a commercial stack? What kind of governance requirements do you need, based on your data controllers? It is a complete heterogeneous mess, basically. So how can we try and bring people together to try and understand what is a TRE and how can we standardize that as best as possible? So within SATRE, we worked on a community-based approach, and we brought everyone inside the tent and we talked about it and described it. So we spent a lot of time engaging, exploring, and understanding where people were coming from all sorts of backgrounds: industry, commercial, public, academic, government. And then we reflected what we found in these events and simplified and create the specification. And now we're kind of in the guide and sustain period of this project. And transparency was key. Everything's open. We did everything through GitHub issues. We've got the documentation is on Read the Docs. And we ran a blog to kind of talk through the different meetings we had and the different events that we followed up. And then we created some videos to engage stakeholders and the public. So this was funded by Adair UK, and the public engagement is really key to all work that's done in those projects. So we worked very, very closely with public. We had a public member as part of our core research team, which is unusual for a technical project. And they were there in every meeting, and they chaired some of the meetings. And it was great because it helped us communicate really, really well, even between techies. We avoided jargon as much as possible, and it was a really good experience. So what is SATRE? Essentially, it's a guide on how to build and run a TRE. There are 4 architectural principles around usability, trust, observability, and standardization. And then we categorized all our different requirements under 4 pillars of IG, technology, data management, and then kind of an other column. And we created 29 capabilities based on everyone's feedback, within which we created 160 statements, 75 of which and we decided as being mandatory. So based on these requirements, the 75 mandatories, if you comply with them, you are running a TRE. Simple as that. The exact definition of those 75, you may disagree, may not. This is a version 1 of this specification, but we're pretty comfortable with those. And we created this with Archimate, with colleagues in UCL. And so we can challenge the model, we can challenge the specification. and view it in different ways. It was only a 9-month project, so we haven't done a lot of this particular aspect, and this is something we'd like to do more, write computational rules around this and try and build computational tools on top of the specification, but it's there and we can do this. And it's truly a community-led specification. We thought when we started there might be 10 or 15 organizations that might be interested in engaging with us. We ended up with 60 across the range of the project. We ran what was called collaboration cafes. If anyone's worked with the Turing Institute, this is a model they've built. And essentially you create, we created a fortnightly meeting at the same time every fortnight. And then we had a schedule of topics that we were going to talk about. People could still bring their own topic they wanted to talk about on that particular day, and then they could go into their own breakout room. They could, it's kind of like birds of a feather, come with an idea. If someone wants to, if you collect a group of people who want to talk about it, you go to a room, talk about feedback at the end. And that was a really rapid way of capturing the community desires and their motivations in this space, because we only had 9 months in this whole project from start to finish. And we had a ramp up phase of like 2 weeks. There is a nightmare to work with, by the way, in terms of funding. They give you no notice, no nothing. You have to start from 0 to 100% in no time. But they're really good funders. So this is my 3rd round of funding with them now. And we had people contribute directly to the GitHub as well. So that was really good. And like I said, we had a lot of public involvement in the project. So they identified that transparency was really important to what we were doing. So we reflected that in 3 mandatory statements in the specification. So we could feed back to the public and say, you came to us, you told us this, and we responded and provided these things in there. And that was really well received. So version 1 was released about 18-ish months ago, and we were quite happy with it. And what does it look like? This is the website, and you can engage with it directly because there's a self-evaluation spreadsheet you can download and look at and evaluate yourself against it. There are 2 reference evaluations from us and the Turing Institute that you can compare against just to get an idea of what it looks like. And it's a spreadsheet. You essentially score yourself. I've got a scoring slide. No, I don't have a scoring slide. So the scoring slide is basically 0, 1, 2. Don't comply, minimum compliance and, advanced compliance sort of thing. That is fairly subjective. And that's kind of feedback we had and something we need to improve on. But essentially, you can go through the spreadsheet and look through it. And you can provide your own, you have a response, you can provide your own evidence to yourself or to the community of how you comply with that requirement. And so in Scotland, through our network, we did a self-assessment, and then we did a peer review of our self-assessments within that. And what you can do with the scoring system, you can do a little heat map. And so the 4 columns represent the 4 safe havens. So 2 safe havens share the same infrastructure. So that's why there are only 4 columns and 5 safe havens. And so you can see where we comply and where there are no non-compliance and where there are differences. And if you can imagine, if you had enough TREs across the UK, you could see whether, you could do a bit of statistics and say where are the variable regions, where the stable regions, and, where the regions where there's large levels of non-compliance and things like that. And so those are the areas to focus on. And so that raised discussions, and we talked about what we're doing in Scotland, and we found things that we can improve on. So it's a really nice framework to work around and to improve yourselves in that space, which didn't really exist before. And you can see we had a couple of things. We're talking about, well, what does encryption at rest really mean? So, that sort of thing. And so gratifyingly, surprisingly, or maybe just a product of the fact that we engaged with as many people as we could, it's been taken up really rapidly in that time. So industry, so Iridia, Canon Medical are using it. Iridia wrote a really nice blog, self-assessing themselves against it. So they've publicized all that on their blog. It's being used in the Entrust project now. So I'm one of the co-Is, and that's 26 partners in 14 countries. They're called secure processing environments across Europe. So nomenclature is hilarious. So TREs, SPEs, SDEs, safe havens. I think I've got, 11, at the moment, different definitions or different terms across the world. And so that is a 3-year project to try and build a network of trusted research environments across Europe and across different domains. It's not just health, but it's mostly health. The Safe Haven Charter, I said, in Scotland has been updated, and it uses the SATRE reference for it. The SATRE review talked heavily about accreditation of SDEs and how do we go about that. And so the Department of Health and Social Care, together with NHS Data for R&D program and UK Stats, are now working on a self-assessment based accreditation method based on the Digital Economy Act. And that, again, is based loosely on the SATRE model. And speaking to them just last week about this, and I think we're going to be doing more work with them on that. And the SDE network is in parts, in places, is using the SATRE specification to try and build their TRE architecture, especially for SDEs that don't have an existent TRE or HPC or infrastructure specialty within their domain. So we've been working with NENC and Lancs and Yorkshire and Humber on their SDEs together with this. And I know one of the public cloud providers has been working on one of the SDEs and building their specification, their SDE based on SATRE. So it reflects a lot of experience of real world use of TREs. Like I said, large number of people came in. We have a lot of, the Scottish Safe Haven Network had a lot of experience, and we covered, population data, health data, administrative data. Organizations were involved in this project, and it embeds all these views of all these different people. So we think it fills a gap of bringing in the baseline and just a way of describing your TRE, because you can say you have a TRE, but then what does that actually mean? At least whether you like it or not, you can at least have something to throw some mud at. And we have because it's all open, we can now work to improve it and do a version 2. And as much as we can, it reflects public opinion. We can say this is what the public is comfortable with, and we can keep that conversation going. And it's open, transparent, and adaptable, the best of open science, basically, and collaborative. So, oops, my animation last night didn't go quite right. Anyway, so the plans are, so like I said, the next round of their funding is started this week, and there's going to be a big announcement next week. But essentially for SATRE, which is only one small part of it, is a version 2. So we're going to be responding to the community and people who've been using and saying, oh, well, don't like this bit, or what about this? We'll be adding about federation, and particularly around AI and machine learning capabilities, especially around the disclosure control of models. What is the risk of exposing information of the training data by releasing the model? And then improve the evaluation process. It's a little bit immature at the moment, and maybe put something about tiering or different use cases, training, formal accreditation, that sort of thing. So like I say, formal announcement next week for what's called Trevolution, yes, which is covering 3 areas of standards, disclosure control and federation. And you can either look at it as an evolution or a revolution. It's up to you, but that's where we are at the moment. And just so we're not only building a next phase, we're also building a community around the SATRE community. We've got funding to do this together, and Dave's one of the co-chairs of this. And so we're restarting up the community engagement for 12 months. If you're interested, come and join in. It's lots of fun. We get lots of discussions going on, and it's really, really interesting. So there's contact details there. I mean, the slides, I'm happy to share the slides, so have a look at that. And I just thought I'd add a little relevance to this audience is, I think our communication experience is really strong, particularly with the public, but also with stakeholders. Technology, we have a very strong but niche experience. I think We're really interested in doing more HPC because health data needs scale more and more, and that's something that we're suffering a little bit. Public cloud works, but it's expensive. So, you know, we'd like to see some more ideas, and governance. We've been doing governance for forever. So I think that's a real strength of what we do. So thank you for your time. Thank you for the people who are doing in the project. And yeah, happy to hear from any questions.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Questions for Chris?
So if I understand correctly, this is agnostic to what is infrastructure, right?
Completely.
And do you have inventory of examples of infrastructure?
So on this URL, the SATRE UK TRE, there's ours and the Turing, and I think there's two others. The Crick have self-assessed themselves, and then Iridia, which is a commercial company, they've done that, which is online. Now that we have more funding, we're going to go around and contact TREs who have said they have self-assessed and ask them, are you happy to publish your one? And we've done that informally, and most have said yes. So we will be publishing them. And ideally, because then we can do that kind of analysis I talked about. It's like, where are the pinch points? Where is it people disagree on where the issue, what compliance looks like, and we can focus on them.
Any questions, Salah?
Yeah, no, great work, and I'm sort of learning about it myself right now from being part of this TRE on AI RR project. So it's kind of probably like a chicken and egg problem, maybe in some sense. So it is very data focused right now currently, if I look at it. Data access focused.
Yes.
It's not compute focused.
No.
What, if you were to guess, let's put it that way, what challenges do you see? I feel like compute is typically more like easier to consume than, data, because one is transient, one is persistent. But is there a reason it was just simply not the need, so that's why you never focused on compute? Or is there anything you feel like would be fundamentally limiting or blocking when you start touching compute related
that's
specifications? Yeah,
it's a good question, and it's probably a gap. It's probably not. The HPC community is probably not one we engage with enough, so probably hasn't been captured properly. So I think in this next phase, I think getting more interest from the HPC community and see how we can involve, even if it's required. I'm not sure whether it's required in the specification, whether you need to say what's required of the compute, but maybe you do. I don't know. So yeah, open to include that and continue those discussions. Yeah.
I mean, you've already said it. The AI community is going to have a large need for this kind of trusted research environment.
Yep.
Thinking, and of course, the AI community is largely compute, similar to the HPC community. So the HPC community will be dragged in to this now through AI. I mean, and because when we look at our use cases in Cambridge, the killer app for our TRE is an Excel spreadsheet. Clinical medicine, I really just wanted a secure spreadsheet, and you don't know the pain I've been through.
Oh, we know.
To get a secure spreadsheet for the clinical medicine within our ISO environment. That was the killer app. Of course, there are outliers now in imaging, when anonymization, it no longer really cuts it. So that data will have to be within a TRE, but it's kind of catching up. And I think we see the same requirement again in social sciences, education, criminology. But, obviously the lead use case was secure spreadsheets for clinical school. And that was the driver.
Yep.
And now all the good stuff can come in behind that.
Have your guys moved to R yet?
That journey is happening, but a secure spreadsheet is the killer app.
Yeah, definitely.